Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Classic Comics. Well, this news just came out earlier today. Apparently, Wizards of the Coast has decided to completely backtrack on their plans to cancel the Open Gaming License 1.0. This is apparently, again, just a complete capitulation. They've not only decided that the original OGL is going to stay in place, but they've also offered additional concessions that ensure that it'll stay that way for good. So let's just go ahead and go through this article. Wizards of the Coast cancels plans to deauthorize Dungeons & Dragons OGL 1.0. So Wizards of the Coast officially declared the original Dungeons & Dragons Open Gaming license will not be deauthorized. The developer walked back plans to deauthorize the OGL 1.0 in favor of a new license, which would give them greater control over third-party creators. Posting to Twitter, the company stated, quote, "Over the past few weeks, you, the community, have made your voices heard, and we've listened. OGL 1.0 will remain untouched, and the entire SRD, or Standard Reference Document, 5.1 is now available under a Creative Commons license." A blog post on D&D Beyond detailed the plans further. And so we have that tweet right here from the D&D Beyond Twitter account. As far as how the walkback impacts Wizards of the Coast's plans to control what content third-party creators can make for D&D, Dungeons & Dragons executive producer Kyle Brink said, "We wanted to protect the D&D play experience into the future. We still want to do that with your help. We're grateful that this community is passionate and active because we'll need your help protecting the game's inclusive and welcoming nature. We wanted to limit the OGL to tabletop RPGs. With this new approach, we are setting that aside and counting on your choices to define the future of play." Earlier in the month, Wizards of the Coast updated OGL leaked online. Allegedly, several third-party content creators who manufactured D&D supplies under the original OGL received the update with an attached contract to sign, though Wizards of the Coast refers to the leaked document as a draft. The new OGL would severely limit what businesses could produce, add massive royalties to those making over $750,000, and open the door to Wizards of the Coast manufacturing and selling third-party creators' products as its own. Wizards of the Coast and D&D resource D&D Beyond's initial responses to fan outcry over the update caused players to declare they jumped ship to other tabletop RPGs like Pathfinder. Wizards of the Coast eventually backtracked on several inclusions in the OGL update, including royalties and the open window to make and sell products from third-party creators. Most recently, the company insisted that it would still deauthorize the OGL 1.0, but replace it with a Creative Commons license. Yeah, I mean, it would seem, at least on the surface, that they've done a complete retreat on this, a complete capitulation, which is, cool to see. But I mean, I don't know. I don't think they're going to just give up on this. My guess is what they're doing is they've probably already got their lawyers working to figure out, how can we still do what we wanted to do with the OGL 1.0 in place? And particularly, how can we do it without our customers realizing we're doing it? That's probably what's happening. But why did they do this? So often there are boycotts and people get upset at big companies. We see that a lot nowadays, but very rarely do you see a company completely retreat like this. So, what caused this to happen? And I think there was a combination of things that took part to cause this to happen. So the first thing is that, I mean, financially, Hasbro is just in trouble. And particularly their stock price has been having a rough year. And that's, that of course, as I've said before, it's the stock price. That's the main thing that's driving this. But what you need to bear in mind is that although it's owned by Hasbro, Wizards of the Coast and the products they produce, mainly D&D and Magic the Gathering, are responsible for the vast majority of Hasbro's sales. Now, I don't know the exact number. I've heard different numbers tossed around. I've heard usually in the area of about 70 to 75% of their sales are D&D and Magic the Gathering. So when you look at the rest of the stuff Hasbro sells, it's really not that big a part of it. So what happens with D&D and with Magic the Gathering has a tremendous impact financially on the company. And during the pandemic, people, they were stuck at home, they couldn't go out, they couldn't go anywhere, so a lot of people got into D&D and Magic the Gathering because they were kind of stuck with options of things to do. That, of course, caused sales to shoot up, profits went up, and I believe that like 2020, 2021 were like the most successful years in the history of D&D. And since they were selling so much, they started upping their, the amount they were producing, the amount of product that they were producing and shipping out. But then things opened up again. And as the economy opened up and people could go back to movies and concerts and all that stuff, people stopped playing so much D&D or Magic, started moving away and sales went down. And that left Hasbro with a lot of unsold product that was getting shipped back to them, which that was hurting them. There was a story back in the fall, which I did a video on where, and I'll put a link to that in the video, but their stock was already starting to have a rough time back in the summer because of all this unsold product. And then on top of that, now we find out that Hasbro now is going to lay off 15% of their workforce and warns that there was a holiday season loss. So basically, the Christmas season, of course, is a big year for all retailers, and particularly got to be for like a toy and game manufacturer, right? But apparently it wasn't a good holiday, no doubt because the economy's in such bad shape. So many people have lost their jobs. So many people are struggling, and the inflation's making it worse. So they didn't have a whole lot of discretionary income to spend on toys and games. And so that left them probably with a very bad financial report for the Christmas holidays, hence why they are laying more people off. That's going to drive their stock down further. And then on top of all that, they've got this whole controversy that's causing them headaches. And the big thing I think that was hurting them was the subscriptions to D&D Beyond. So they've already made it clear that going online, that is the future for them. And I've already covered this in previous live streams and videos. Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast want to make D&D, they want to move it into the virtual space, and they want to be basically a tech company. And word leaked out that this is really what matters to them most. And so I don't actually know how many have been canceled. I don't know, but I'm guessing it's a lot because if it weren't, they wouldn't be backtracking like this. Like I say, this is the key to the future as far as Hasbro is concerned. So if they're shedding subscribers, that's going to get their attention more than anything. And I think that's the main thing that really drove them to make this turnaround, this change of course. When their next quarterly report comes out, their next financial report, they probably are going to have to report on all the lost subscriptions they had, and that's going to send the stock even lower. And then on top of that, there's another thing. A lot of people were starting to organize and promote the idea of boycotting that D&D movie that is going to be coming out later this year. I think it's in early April now, so about 2.5 months. And there was a growing movement online to boycott this movie. And if that movie came out and it was a bomb, obviously that's a financial loss for them anyway. But again, that's another blow to the stock, sends it down. And I think if you look at all these things combined, the possible boycott of the film and it failing, the canceled subscriptions, and then them being in bad shape anyway, with all this unsold product they couldn't get rid of that's being returned to them, and then the bad holiday, which didn't really give them much help. I think they were looking ahead and seeing that they were going to have an absolute bloodbath on the stock market. And they decided we've got to head this thing off. And they realized that the quickest, easiest way to do that is to just, hey, give their customers what they want. And again, I don't think that that's really going to be the end of this. My guess is they're going to just try and figure out some other way to do this, but do it in some more subtle way that isn't as obvious. But we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But anyway, it is nice to see the people sort of sticking it to a large company and winning. And I wish we would see this more often. I wish we'd see more boycotts of, say, Disney Plus or Netflix. But, you take what you can get. But anyway, what do you think? Do you think I'm right in my analysis of this situation? And then that's why they've changed their minds and are going to leave the original OGL in place? Am I off base on this? And if so, what do you think? What do you think the reasoning is? Let me know in the comments. And while you're at it, also please do like this video and sub to the channel and hit the bell for notifications. And as always, thanks for watching.